Today I'll be discussing Nat Turner and what he led to now be called the most bloodiest slave rebellion in the history of slavery. I'm going to break down the key factors that led to the plotting and carrying out of Turner's Rebellion and the impact that it made in the South post-rebellion. Nat Turner was born on October 2nd, 1800 in Southampton, Virginia. His mother was an enslaved woman brought from Africa, and his father was an escaped enslaved man. His grandma, however, was the one who primarily raised him. His grandmother was a devout Christian and supporter of abolishing slavery. He was taught to read by his owner at the time, and he would spend hours reading the Bible, praying, and fasting. Turner was an extremely intelligent boy, and as he got older, started preaching about anti-slavery and using the Bible against slavery, which, for obvious reasons, was very problematic for white people at the time. When Nat turned 22, he made a plan to run away because he was tired of the mistreatment and cruelty he was experiencing, and he was actually successful in his plan. But as he got further away, he had a vision that he said came from God himself, who told him that he was the chosen one that would put an end to all his brothers and sisters' suffering. God told him to go back to his plantation because his destiny was tied to slavery. So he does go back and proceeds to teach more of his followers about religion, and some people even referred to him as a prophet at the time. This is the part that Nat Turner's story gets very misconstrued in history today. With more films and documentaries coming out about Nat Turner, they say his reasoning for rebellion was because of the mistreatment of himself, wife, and friends. And while trauma does play a big role in shaping Nat Turner, it was the visions he felt he was receiving from God that he had a higher purpose in this life to make a difference. Fast forward to 1828, where now Turner is working for a man named Joseph Travis. While working in the fields, Turner claimed that God showed himself to him and told him now is the time for him to stand up to do something, to fight back against slavery. And that was exactly what he did next. Around this time, Turner, along with other enslaved people in the South, are seeing places like Haiti, who had successful revolutions and who are now free, and helping free other countries as well. They are also seeing failed attempts at rebellions in the States, like Gabriel's Rebellion, where he tried to gather thousands of enslaved men and women along with abolitionists and Quakers to fight, but ultimately failed. And as a consequence, the South began to restrict black people's privileges, such as large gatherings or being out past certain hours of the night. This, along with Denmark Vesey's plan, where he recruited almost 1,000 enslaved people to fight and hopefully make it to newly free Haiti to find freedom. He also failed, and they imposed even further restrictions on black people, such as no longer being able to hire themselves out or work for free black people. All of this added to the visions Turner believed he was seeing from God. He decided that he could not stand by any longer. Now we get to 1831, the year of the rebellion. There was a solar eclipse that happened in February, and Turner took this as a sign from God that it was time to go through with the revolt. Him, with a few other of his closest friends and allies, set the date of the rebellion for July 4th, most likely because July 4th is Independence Day, and what other day would be more fitting for what they were trying to accomplish. Unfortunately, close to the time of the rebellion, Turner got sick and they had to postpone the rebellion for a few more weeks. But then in August, there was another eclipse, but unlike the first one, the color of the sky changed as well as the eclipse that was happening. So Turner took this as God telling him the time is now. So on August 21st, 1831, Turner, along with his small group of trusted friends, started the rebellion. They first started by killing his owner Joseph along with his entire family. They took a few of his guns from there and went on house to house freeing enslaved men and women and killing white families. This happened for 2 days, and Turner's group amounted to more than 50 people, and in total they killed around 60 white people. After 2 days, Turner's group was stopped by around 200 local white militiamen that banded together to end the slaughtering. They are stopped almost immediately, and 57 of the men who participated in the rebellion were later sentenced to death. Nat Turner, however, got away at first and went into hiding for around 2 months before he was spotted and taken into custody. 6 days later, he was executed. Many believe that he was hanged and then skinned, but since his body has never been found, no one can be certain. There's also myths that they used his skin to make purses and accessories as some sort of trophy for white people. They also think they may have found his skull in Indiana, but again, no one could be sure. The days following the rebellion were completely chaotic. White people were so enraged that they went into a 2-week killing spree of black people. People who had no idea of the rebellion were being brutally killed, it got so bad that the leader of one of the militia had to practically beg whites to stop killing black people, but only because it was a loss of property and money to a lot of them. Definitely not because they were killing innocent people. By the end of the weeks of chaos, over 200 black people were killed, and again, most of them had no involvement whatsoever in the rebellion. Following Nat Turner's insurrection, white people were extremely scared because a rebellion like this had never happened before. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, Nat Turner's Rebellion was the bloodiest insurrection of black people in the history of slavery. It scared white people so severely that they even began to have conversations about abolishing slavery entirely because they felt like they had to constantly look over their shoulders for another uprising such as this one. Turner was rumored to have over 1,000 followers all over the South, and it kept the white people in a state of uneasiness. But, as we know, slavery will not be abolished for 35 more years. So even though they were scared, white Southerners still refused to give up on slavery. Instead, they made legislation that prohibited enslaved or free black people from preaching or attending religious meetings without white supervision. Then, in 1835, Virginia passed the gag rule, which made abolitionist rhetoric illegal to preach in the state. Virginia also targeted free black people by trying to push them to relocate, and they made a police bill that did not allow them to have a trial by jury, which caused many of them to be convicted of crimes and sent into slavery. Even with all these restrictions, they could still not silence the voices of the enslaved people. And while Nat Turner did not directly cause the Civil War that led to the emancipation of black people, he paved the way and showed that black people cannot be silenced, and even though it may have seemed unachievable, they could start to see the possibility and the hope for freedom. Thank you for listening.